I'm Khalil Mathai. I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm also a distance runner. I have done 10 full marathons and around 20 half marathons. My personal best timing is 3:55 for the full marathon and 1:40 for the half. I'll share a few thoughts about the physiology and the philosophy of distance running and fitness. Why do people exercise? Of course, people in sports exercise specifically for excelling in the particular chosen event. But all people exercise because it improves their sense of well-being. It is a stress buster and it is supposed to prolong life. The effects of exercise extend across the systems: the central nervous system, the cardiovascular system, the immune system, the respiratory system, the musculoskeletal, skin, and gastrointestinal systems are all positively influenced by moderate, regular exercise. Firstly, let us clarify a few terms. What is aerobic exercise and what is anaerobic exercise? Starting off with anaerobic exercise, when you exercise in the anaerobic zone, you are generally performing a high intensity exercise and your muscles are not receiving enough oxygen to perform under aerobic conditions. So you accumulate lactic acid. Anaerobic metabolism is inefficient. The calorie burn, incidentally, because of that, is more. But you tend to develop an oxygen debt in the muscle, which cannot be sustained for a long period. The blood pressure during anaerobic zone exercises is usually on the higher side. There is an endocrine surge of catecholamines and cortisol. Anaerobic zone exercises include sprints. Even games like football and tennis, though they are over a prolonged period, are actually anaerobic because you have high intensity sprints and high muscle performance times interspersed with recovery periods. A footballer sprints like a 100-meter sprinter, and then he steps back and waits for the next ball. So that time he is refreshing and also washing out the lactic acid. So this is recovery. So these anaerobic zone exercises include high intensity sports. Coming to the aerobic zone. Aerobic zone exercises are exercises where the oxygen requirement is continuously being met. So the energy metabolism here is efficient, and so the calorie burn is actually less. So you don't lose weight so much in aerobic zone exercise. There is decreased lactate accumulation. Blood pressure when you exercise in the aerobic zone is close to physiological. A few terms. When you're exercising in the aerobic zone and you increase the intensity of exercise, you can shift into the anaerobic. And this point at which aerobic metabolism switches over to anaerobic metabolism is called the anaerobic threshold. Most marathon runners and most long distance runners focus on increasing their anaerobic threshold. The higher intensity of exercise you can perform in the aerobic zone, the faster you can run a marathon. So you are just running below the anaerobic threshold. At least your average speed is below the anaerobic threshold. The higher the threshold, the higher the marathon speed. VO2 max is the oxygen utilization capacity. That also has got a direct correlate with the anaerobic threshold. There are a few tests to ascertain where your anaerobic threshold lies. One of these tests, there are many of them, is called the Conconi test. Here, an athlete is made to exercise wearing a pulse rate monitor. As the intensity of exercise increases, for example, a 400-meter run over shorter and shorter periods, as the intensity increases, the heart rate rises. It's a linear graph. But when the anaerobic zone is crossed, the linear graph suddenly spikes upward. So that indicates that this is the level of intensity at which the person has shifted to the anaerobic zone. A simple test what we can do to ascertain whether we are in aerobic or anaerobic zone is the talk test. If you can talk with reasonable comfort while exercising, you are in the aerobic zone. If you cannot, you're running short of breath, that means you have shifted possibly close to the anaerobic zone. Let us look at the benefits of distance running. We will start off with the central nervous system because that is my area of interest and expertise. There is cognitive benefit. What is cognition? Cognition is actually information processing. So in the physiology of cognition, you have to understand that there is information assimilation through our sense organs. We see, we read, we hear. Then we have information assimilation, where the information which has come in is archived. And then we have information application. Coming to the physiology of memory, how do we remember something that we have seen? Chosen memories are initially sent to the hippocampus, where they undergo what is called a multimodal integration. The visual, the auditory, the sensory, the emotional aspects are all brought together in a sack. So you have an information sachet of a particular memory. But the hippocampus is like a desktop with a limited storage capacity. From the hippocampus, during sleep, information moves on to two neocortical areas. One is the frontal lobe, which is also called the executive cortex. Here, information is stored in language form so that it's easy to take decisions. Raw information is stored in the association cortices. And these two information depots are connected through the caudate nucleus. Let's look at the physiology of movement. How do we move? We have a motor strip which is in the posterior part of the frontal lobe. Each neuron there can move one particular muscle or one particular group of muscles. But if each time we wanted to walk, we had to control individual muscles, walking would be impossible. So when we learn to do things, we develop movement sequences, and these sequences are stored in the accessory motor cortex. The basal ganglia decide the strength and the range of movement, and the cerebellum brings in reciprocal movements and regulation of movements for balance and for coordination. One more aspect of movement is cyclical pattern generators, not very well understood. When you run, for example, after a certain time, your cyclical pattern generators take over. These are not located in the neocortex, but somewhere high up in the brainstem, or even some of it is in the spinal cord. These pattern generators regulate the muscles which are involved in the rhythmical movement of running. Now, using cyclical pattern generators actually liberates the higher cortex at that time, and that results in many cognitive benefits. Cyclical pattern generators are used in all religions. You find prayer beads. You find a prayer wheel, the Tibetan prayer wheel. or even repetitive chants. Anything that is cyclical and repeated the orders move down from the cortex to cyclical pattern generators, and cortical disinhibition helps in consolidation. So what are the benefits of rhythmic low intensity exercise? Circuits are synaptic circuits whereby information moves in a particular direction are pruned and regulated. There is a strengthening of the functional circuits. Improved cognitive speed and function is a result, and memories get consolidated. Now, how does all this happen? This is because exercise induces an improvement in the axonoplasmic flow. What are other central nervous system benefits of exercise, of running? The neurochemical milieu is improved. There is an endorphin, which are endogenous morphinoids, surge, which gives us a sense of well-being. The brain blood flow is rationalized. Other systems, the cardiovascular system, your heart muscle undergoes toning when you exercise. It's a moot question whether the heart muscle really requires toning, but it helps the heart muscle to be capable of coping with higher levels of stress and requirement. Blood pressure effects, there is a general lowering of the blood pressure in people who exercise in the aerobic zone regularly. This is because of a decrease in the peripheral vasomotor tone. The heart rate is decreased in runners. You will find that long distance runners usually have a heart rate which is lower than normal. 40s and 50s is not unusual. This is supposed to be because of increased vagal tone. It gives you a higher reserve of exercise capability. So long distance runners have improved vagal tone. Again, increased vagal tone might sometimes be deleterious, might result in vasovagal, so-called vasovagal attacks and loss of consciousness. The immune system is tuned by exercise. There is an increased resistance to infections. Mostly the neutrophils are involved. The lymphocytes also play a part. CD4 count rises. Lymphocytes also police the body for tumors and decrease the incidence of cancers. There is a decrease in inflammation. The benefits of exercise extend to the other systems. In the respiratory system, there is improved oxygen exchange across the alveolar membrane. There is an increase in the vital capacity. And remember that synchronized regulated breathing, like in yoga or in martial arts or even in long distance running, involves again the cyclical pattern generators. And this has its own cognitive benefits. The skin blood supply is increased during exercise because of the requirement for heat exchange. Antiseptic effect of sweat implies that when you sweat, the skin bacteria are better for us. The GI tract mobility is improved and there is increased nutrient absorption. What about the benefits on the musculoskeletal system? This is obvious. Muscle strength improves as the fibers hypertrophy. But remember, the muscles you train, the fibers you train are the fibers which hypertrophy. So a person who indulges in regular long distance running might not be able to sprint as fast as he used to because the hypertrophy has all gone to the slow twitch fibers rather than to the fast twitch fibers. Bone strength is improved by regular running. This is because of both calcification and because of the improvement in the protein matrix. Hence the importance of calcium supplementation and adequate protein intake while you are exercising. Remember that running does not result in osteoarthritis of the knees. Osteoarthritis will occur in the knee if you have a previous injury or if your bones are weak. And the bone weakness, which results in micro fractures, are a consequence of disuse, not of overuse. There have been studies which have compared runners' knees with non-runners, and the incidence of osteoarthritis is actually less in people who run regularly, provided they do not have a ligament injury, which results in instability of the knee. So let us discuss a few pearls for a rounded regime for the health of a person who is not a competitive sportsman but in exercise for general fitness. Aerobic or cardio exercises should be performed at least 5 times a week for a minimum of 30 minutes. Most people who are regular runners would be doing about an hour. When you're doing this exercise, your heart rate should be around 2/3 of maximum. Here, that means that you are just at the verge of the anaerobic threshold. Anaerobic exercises or strength training exercises can be performed twice a week. Coordination and balance is one aspect which runners sometimes neglect. Dancing, martial arts, tai chi, Zumba, all these will help to improve the coordination and balance. And then we come to skill and hand-eye coordination. Games like badminton are probably good in this regard.